The country of Kenya is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Africa. People come here for the beautiful beaches, the amazing scenery, the wonderful game parks, and the fascinating culture. What most tourists don't see is the extreme poverty and desperation that many people still face today. In our shrinking global village, ADRA has been building partnerships with Kenyans for many years, helping them with adult education, skills training, income generation, agricultural instruction, water systems, health and sanitation, and emergency response. Hi, my name is Naomi Striemer. I am a recording artist from Canada, and one of my favorite charities has always been ADRA. I've had the privilege to come to Africa to visit a few of their development sites and see what's really going on. I am here today at Niabori, a school for disabled children. It was started 20 years ago by a Canadian physiotherapist all the way from the east coast of Canada. He came to Kenya and he started this amazing project that is still going today. In many African cultures, having a disability is frowned upon, and families will hide children in closets, in backyards, never to be seen by the public because they are shamed by these people. ADRA is teaching them that it is nothing to be ashamed of. They are also people who can go in the world and do magnificent things. You can see behind me many of the children playing together, regardless of the disabilities that they have. Let me take you now and introduce you to some of them. Behind me here are some children who have suffered or were born with palsy. And what you see them eating is very special meals prepared and funded by ADRA. This young man here, Oliver, is 20 years old, but really in civilization he is just 1 year old because this is the first year that he has been in civilization. Before that he was hidden behind doors, an embarrassment to the family, something they didn't want to talk about until they realized that it was not an embarrassment to have a child born with palsy. So we're very happy to have him here, and he's enjoying life with other children and adults. The children who are here need daily provisions and daily help and treatment. Many of these children do not have homes to go back to because they were abandoned because of their ailments. Many of the children have families, but they live too far to get here every day. These kids are allowed to stay here for the entire year and live on the grounds and the facilities you see behind me so that they can get the daily treatment that they need, the care, the food, and the schooling, as well as any medical attention. This is Paul. He has muscular dystrophy, which is a disease that unfortunately does not improve over time. But while he is here, he is getting the muscular stretches and he is having an enjoyable life that will be prolonged. As you can see, this is a much prettier and more decorated hall for the girls to sleep in, and the ladies have done quite a fantastic job of putting some special touches to their bed areas. I would like you to meet Emily. Her story is typical of many of the children that I have met here. Emily suffered from severe bow-leggedness, a condition that can occur because of malnutrition or having rickets as a baby. In spite of the fact that she had difficulty walking, her father used to make her work very hard in the fields. When her mother died, her father abandoned her. Fortunately for Emily, some friends had heard about the ADRA program, and she came to live here.
I am very happy that I've been able to come to live here at Niabori. I'm getting a good education at the school and have made many good friends. Before I came here, it was difficult for me to walk very far. Now, after the surgery and physiotherapy that I got here, I am able to walk very comfortably. I have joined the dance program here, and we've had a lot of fun doing that. We recently won first place at a national competition. And I'm working hard on my studies and hope to go on to secondary school and then on to university to become a nurse.
Diana is learning how to walk using these bars to strengthen her legs and her bones so she won't have to be in a wheelchair one day. We are in the gymnasium where the children get rehabilitation and are able to exercise. Brian here, who we just saw doing those amazing pull-ups, was not in that condition when they found him. He could not even put on his shoe or walk because of a tendon problem. So after having surgery to have part of his tendon replaced, he can now walk and he can do pull-ups, and his rehabilitation is going quite well. We are here now at the school that is an integrated school where the children who are disabled learn every day with children who are not disabled in classrooms together. We are about to go visit them in a class right now. This is class 4, or as we in Canada know it, grade 4. Hello. I just recently learned that not too far from the school we are at right now is where the US President Barack Obama's father was born, which goes to show you any one of these children could really end up anywhere in the world, and who knows what could happen to their children. I'm here with Duncan, who's a very, very special boy. He is extremely smart. He finished his final exam very high, and he has been accepted into secondary school. His only problem is he doesn't have the transportation to get there. However, he's still here socializing with his former students, and he helps by tutoring them until he gets to go to secondary school. Here we are in a classroom with a very special toy. This toy is made of waste plastic bags. If you can imagine, another good way of recycling, roll it up in a little ball and play with it, right? That's what these children are doing, and they cherish this ball. I'm here with Moses, who is a football star. We know that as soccer. He's very good with his feet. He is also very, very smart, so he's looking forward to continue schooling, and it's amazing what you can do when you put your mind to it, and Moses here is teaching us that. With the amazing success of the Nyabori Center for the Disabled, the ADRA team decided to take the program out into the community and call it the Community-based Rehabilitation Program, or CBR for short. Over the last 16 years, they have identified and worked with hundreds of children all over this part of Kenya. They have educated parents that there is no shame in having a child with a disability, and have encouraged them to bring the children out into the light for treatment, surgery, and therapy. Thelma is just 2 years old. She was born as a normal, healthy child, but then at the age of 5 months, the mother noticed that the head was growing abnormally large. As the head grew, she was unable to support the weight of her head, and this prevented her from learning to sit and delayed her normal development. A neighbor told her about the CBR program funded by ADRA, who helped children like her who suffer with hydrocephalus. ADRA became involved and arranged for surgery.
After the surgery, then we had to train her, literally train her, how to learn to control the neck, how to sit, then to go through the milestones. From sitting, you go to crawling. And then from there, we trained her to stand, then we trained her to walk.
And she's only 2 years old.
Yes.
So she's really doing what every 2-year-old is doing now.
Yes.
And she's doing just fine. Look at her sitting up and everything. This is amazing, and she's such a beautiful little girl. She's so sweet. So you can see what the ADRA project is doing and continuing to do, helping little girls like Velma to have more normal lives. The CBR program that ADRA is conducting here in Kendu Bay has changed attitudes about the disabled, not only with children, parents, and teachers, but also governments and officials. The CBR program is now being duplicated in many other parts of Kenya by other NGOs and the government of Kenya. When a program like this replicates itself, you really know that you have had a positive impact on a country and that it is worth all of the effort that it takes to develop partnerships like this. Our next day in Kenya brought on a whole new set of emotions. As we drove through the beautiful countryside past the small farms and the tea plantations, I tried to prepare myself for the special ADRA project that we were about to see. It is not a subject that we like to think about much, and yet I am so grateful that ADRA is doing something about it here in Kenya. In Africa and in many other parts of the world, there are many people groups that practice what they call female circumcision. In this part of Kenya, they call it female genital cut. For many years, ADRA has been calling it for what it really is: female genital mutilation, or FGM for short. We caught up with the ADRA program director for the campaign against FGM, Robert Onsando, who educated me about this horrific practice and what ADRA is doing to eradicate FGM in Kenya.
Female genital mutilation, which is popularly known as female circumcision, is a partial or total removal of female external genitalia. And this is purely for ritualistic reasons. It does not have any therapeutic, any medical reason why it should be done, but it is done because of culture. Hence, it is a rite of passage from childhood to adulthood. Female genital mutilation has a lot of medical issues. The moment you cut the clitoris, you're bound to have a lot of bleeding, and the bleeding may end up into anemia. Anemia, if not well checked in time, may cause death. We also have other medical issues. We have difficulty in delivery. So as a result of that, we may have either the mother dying during delivery, we may have the baby itself having brain damage, and the brain damage may result into epilepsy. We also have cases.
As I talked with Robert, he went on to tell me that the practice of FGM not only has immediate detrimental effects, such as excruciating pain, infections, difficult menstrual periods, and damage to the bladder and kidneys. It can also have multiple long-term effects. These include the risk of HIV and AIDS, sterility, abnormal growths and ruptures, a reduction of libido, and often eventual divorce and abandonment by the husband due to the health issues. Perhaps one of the saddest outcomes of the practice is how many girls very quickly after the mutilation become victims of early marriage, entering a life of misery as early as the age of 9 or 10 years old. These girls drop out of school to join their new husbands, never having the opportunity to reach their life potential. While it is not the normal practice of ADRA to interfere with cultural practices, it sometimes makes exceptions when the health and life of individuals are at risk. This is exactly what ADRA is doing with the practice of FGM. Every attempt is made to encourage the positive ritual aspects of coming-of-age ceremonies and to discourage the mutilation practice itself. Health workers and drama groups visit schools and villages, educating everyone against the health dangers of FGM. Using skits and traditional music, they bring the message home that female genital mutilation must be stopped.
Stop! Female genital cut! Stop!
Our next stop brought us to the home of a woman who used to be a practitioner of FGM. Rebecca started performing FGM when she was 20 years old, when her grandmother became too old to do it anymore, and the practice was handed down to her.
As a traditional circumciser, I took the responsibility of this role with a lot of pride. This position also gave me a lot of status in my community. Typically, I would carry out the procedure early in the morning while the body was still numb. Girls would be seated on a small stool near my house where I would perform the traditional ceremony. I never used drugs or anesthetic. A few years ago, ADRA came to our region and began educating us and our children about the dangers of the cut. Girls stopped coming to me, and I was very concerned about what would happen to them. But it seems like they are doing very well. In fact, even better than those who have gone through the procedure. They are getting married, having children, and seem to have very few health problems. Since ADRA has taught me more about this traditional practice, I now believe that it is a ritual that should not continue. I hope that the practice can be stopped everywhere.
Thanks to the education that ADRA is doing, many women like Rebecca are giving up the practice of the cut. At an ADRA ceremony, 3 of these women handed me the tools of their trade and vowed to never perform FGM again. In addition to educating students and village leaders about the dangers of FGM, ADRA is also working with legislators to enact laws that will prohibit the practice throughout Kenya. Hopefully, one day soon, female genital mutilation will be forever banned, not only in Kenya, but throughout the world. Day 3 in Kenya brought me to a school where ADRA has been assisting young people for many years. One of the most tragic byproducts of HIV/AIDS is the high number of orphans that it has produced throughout Africa. Here in Kenya, ADRA is finding children lost on the streets of the city and sponsoring them for food, shelter, and a good education, saving them from a life of crime, drugs, and prostitution. Those who are not able to go on to university can choose to learn a trade with the help of ADRA. It was a relief to get some relaxation on the weekend. I was able to visit one of Kenya's beautiful game parks filled with wildlife. We quickly discovered many animals, including a leopard in a tree and 4 lion cubs playing in the grass by their sleepy mother.
We're about 30 feet away from the cutest little lion cubs, and you really just want to run out and play with them. I wish we really could do that because they look really cuddly, but I'd probably be killed immediately. I really have to say, being on the safari for about 30 minutes, 40 minutes now, I think everyone has to do a safari at least once in their lifetime. I just put the money into it and go do it. You'll appreciate it. It's amazing.
I especially appreciated the opportunity to visit a Maasai village. All of the women came out of their mud huts to meet us and sing for us. The homes of the Maasai are arranged in a circle, inside the perimeter of a living fence, and they bring their livestock inside the camp at night to keep them safe from predators. The children took me on a tour around the village, and I had a chance to see inside one of the houses. It was amazing for me to observe the extreme flexibility of the human spirit, as demonstrated by the Maasai, a people whose life is centered around their cattle. Of course, no visit to a Maasai village would be complete without visiting the market. It was obvious that I was not the first tourist that had stopped by their village. Across the border in Tanzania, we visited an infant orphanage, one that has received help over the years from ADRA and other supporters. When a mother in Africa dies giving birth, the extended family often do not have the resources to care for the baby, or the funds to purchase baby formula. All too often, the baby will follow the mother in death after only a few short days of life. The Cradle of Love infant orphanage was set up to help save the fragile lives of orphaned and abandoned infants. With a capacity of 40 babies, the orphanage is almost always full. When the babies are old enough to start taking solid food, they are returned to their extended families. If there's no home to go to, efforts are made to find responsible parents wanting to adopt. Kids can stay here until about the age of 2, when, if they have not yet found a home, they'll graduate to another orphanage that is designed to care for older babies. This amazing baby home has saved the lives of hundreds of babies, and it was a real delight for me to spend a few hours playing with the babies. The next country we visited in this part of Africa was Sudan. ADRA has been working here since the mid-80s, when famine and drought was wreaking havoc on the lives and the economy of this whole region of Africa. As the country struggled with civil conflict and millions of people were displaced from their homes, ADRA has been instrumental in providing basic needs such as water, food, healthcare, and sanitation. Today, I am in Jawasir to see the desert farming program. It is very exciting because, as you can see around me, it is all desert. So it'll be very fascinating to learn how they have turned this land into a farming community. As I visited some of the farms and spoke with the people who live here, an amazing story of transformation emerged. Not only did I see new life growing in the desert, I witnessed firsthand new life and opportunity springing up in the hearts and minds of the people. The story of the people living in this part of Sudan is a sad one, and one being faced by so many communities in Africa today who live on marginal lands. With the rapid world climate change we have experienced over the last 50 years, the livelihoods of many people have been devastated by desertification.
At one time, not too long ago, when I was a boy, our people used to make a good living by raising sheep, goats, and camels on this land. We even got enough rain to grow crops, and we had lots of grazing land for our livestock. Then, during the severe droughts of the 80s, we had almost no rain, and our homeland was destroyed. What was once beautiful grasslands is now mostly desert.
In the early stages of this crisis, ADRA's response was one of emergency relief. The drought had not only wiped out herds of livestock, it had devastated a way of life. What do you do when you are a nomadic herder and all of your animals die, and your pasture land turns to sand? The two-phase work that ADRA does is found within its name, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. Whenever or wherever a crisis strikes, a disaster hits, or war and conflicts swell refugee camps, ADRA is often one of the first responders on the ground, with emergency, life-saving relief. Then after the crisis is over, ADRA often stays by to help people rebuild their lives with integrated programs of personal and community development. This is what happened in Jawasir. Even though the famine was over and some rain was falling again, the land had become a desert and would never again be able to sustain the people's way of life. They would never be able to return to being nomadic herders again. They were casualties of a changing world. And without help from the outside from an agency like ADRA, the community and culture of the Hawawir people may have been lost forever. As ADRA began to do development work with the people, it not only drilled boreholes to access a huge lake of water under the sand, it also delivered a wellspring of ideas and education that have brought amazing, positive change to the community.
Life has not been easy for us here, especially for women. It was our job to collect water and firewood. Every day we would have to walk about 5 kilometers in the hot sun to the nearest well. We were always on the move, searching for new pasture for our animals. As children, we never had the chance to go to school. After ADRA came to work in our community, we began to settle down and establish small farms. Having a constant supply of water, we built small houses to live in and schools for our children. One of the things that has brought about the biggest change in our lives is the Women's Development Group that ADRA started. We started the group with the idea that we would learn how to read and write, but it has become much more than that. In our group, we learned many things about health and sanitation, food processing, how to make soap, how to run our household economy, and the many different ways that we can contribute to the income of our family. A revolving fund helped us get small loans to start small businesses in our homes. In our groups, we also discuss the problems and challenges we face and what we might be able to do to make improvements. I am so grateful for all of the things that ADRA has done to help our community.
Today is a holiday, and I have found little 11-year-old Zachariah in the fields helping his father with the farming. Before the ADRA project came to town, there were no schools, and there certainly was not any farming. You can see that this has turned into an oasis from what used to be a desert. As I talked with Zachariah with the help of a translator, he told me that he really likes coming here after school to help his father with the field work. He said that he especially likes harvest time when they can gather all of the food that they have grown and take some of it to market. He said that one of his jobs was to gather enough alfalfa each day to bring home to feed the animals. It is amazing to me to see such a familiar crop of wheat in the middle of an absolute desert. I am here with the man responsible for this particular crop of wheat, Tumsa. Tumsa told me how much life has changed for him since ADRA began partnering here with his community. Taking mercy on us, he invited us to take shelter from the hot sun. As we talked together, he told me how his family used to be nomads, and how the droughts of the 1980s had completely wiped out the herds of his tribe. He told me how ADRA had not only helped them with emergency supplies, but had shown them how they could make a living as farmers, using irrigation from the boreholes. Now not only do they have crops for their families and animals, but also some left over for income. He told me about how ADRA had formed a men's development committee that still meets on a regular basis to discuss and solve the issues of their community. And he told me the group had now reached a point where they were managing the project themselves and would be able to continue even after ADRA leaves. As we sat there talking about life in the desert, I noticed Tumsa's camels nearby and couldn't resist asking for a ride. How could I visit Sudan and not ride a camel? Being led around on that camel, I could not help but think about what it must be like to live your entire life as a nomad, always looking for water and pasture, never knowing about the luxuries of life that so many of us take for granted. What a wonderful thing ADRA has done for this community by giving them new resources, training, and opportunity.
After ADRA began to work in our community, things have really changed. We all settled down in one area around the boreholes, and we became interested in building a community. We started schools for our children. We built a health clinic where we have learned about health and nutrition and a safer way to live. Farming has given us a steady income. If someone said to us now, "Why don't you go back to being nomadic herders?" we would never want to do that. Our children now have dreams of becoming engineers and physicians instead of shepherds and nomads. And thanks to ADRA, they have the opportunity to do just that.
Today I learned a great deal of the importance of water. Unlike at home where I can turn on a tap or take a 20-minute shower, it is not so easy here. Learning of people who previously had to walk 5 kilometers to simply get a bucket of water to bring home. Water is very important in so many parts of the world, especially here in Jawasir, Sudan. And I just love what ADRA is doing and the help that they are giving this community. I met wonderful, beautiful people today, and I feel as though I have been blessed. Thank you so much for sharing. My next visit was to an IDP camp in another part of the country. I learned that an IDP camp is little different from a refugee camp, in which people who have had to flee their own country are finding refuge in camps that have been set up in the relative safety of another country. IDP stands for internally displaced people. An IDP camp is where people go in their own country when they are forced to flee their homes. These camps, whether refugee or IDP, are almost always made possible through the generosity of humanitarian organizations such as ADRA. If it were not for their help, most of these people would not survive. Whether they have had to flee their homes because of war or natural disaster, ADRA is quick to respond with food, water, sanitation, medical treatment, and vital supplies. As I met and spoke to the people who lived at this IDP camp in Sudan, they told me the story of how they had fled their homes back in 1988 when there was conflict in the southern region of the country. I was shocked to realize that they had been living here in this camp for over 22 years. They told me that now, even though there is peace in the south and it is safe to return, they don't have the money to return and to rebuild their lives. They fear that their homes, fields, and villages will have by now been occupied by others, and that it would be very difficult to reestablish themselves. Most of these people have little to no hope of returning to their original homes. This is their new home. What they are in desperate need of is more water opportunities, more wells, more schooling for their children, health education, and vocational training so that they can support their families with a trade. As I walked, children gathered around, and I realized the hopeless situation. In this camp alone, there are 15,000 people. In the camp next door, there are another 15,000, and these are just two among many other camps around the same size. Since 2002, ADRA has been doing a number of programs here, including the returnee program for some of these families to go back to their original homes. They have done food for work programs. They have also taught them how to farm and grow their own food. ADRA has helped with the schooling program, the street kids, bringing health and medical clinics in, as well as water sanitization, bringing toilets to these homes, which otherwise would be a simple hole in the ground where health is a very big problem. It is very difficult for them to get clean water here, so it makes it very important. As we made our way back to Khartoum the next day, I couldn't help but think of all the things that I had seen on my trip. I thought about how so many times we get so caught up in our own little world that our small problems often eclipse the much bigger, life-threatening problems that others face, especially here in Africa. I am so thankful that there are dedicated agencies like ADRA that can remind us that the world is much bigger than ourselves, and that it is important for us to reach out to the hand of partnership to help save lives and give people hope and opportunity. I also came to appreciate that part of the genius of ADRA lies in its network, as different aspects of the various programs that I visited were funded from the different donor offices in Australia, Europe, and North America, and of course, Canada. As people partner together, we can, as ADRA says, change the world one life at a time.